lesson. We are going to start off by opening up this AI right here. We are going to make these bubbles down here. So we're going to make bubbles using gradients and also adding a little highlight to them as well. So let's get started. Okay, so first click on the Bubble AI, download that one, and then click on opening it up. It's going to look something like this. I can just take this one away so we can see. Your file is going to look something like this. I'm going to have the instructions right next to me right here, and then I'm going to switch between going between here and the Illustrator file because there's some very specific steps we're going to take, so I don't want to get confused. Okay, so we're going to start off by making some bubbles using a radial gradient fill that's already in your swatch panel. So we're going to make sure we have our swatches. I think I would have them up over here, but if you don't, you go to Window and then go to Swatches, and then we'll pull them up right here. So we're going to use the selection tool, the black arrow, click on our little first bubble over here. We can zoom in a little bit more so we know what we're doing. Okay, that was a little bit too much. Okay, I'm just going to move so we have the screen in the middle. So we have this one selected. I do not want to fill on this one, so I'm just going to take away the black fill. Make sure that we are on our fill panel over here. So we go over to swatches, and then we're going to choose the fill down here. It's the first fill in the fourth row, named swatch, new gradient swatch 5. If this is not in the same spot as I have them in, just look for the name new gradient swatch 5. Click on that one, and then it fills our little bubble right here. So a circle has a few different like highlight options. Like they got the highlight, they got the core shadow, and the reflected light. By just filling it, it doesn't really look dynamic or anything like that. So we're gonna pull up our gradient panel to make sure it's more dynamic and looks more alive. So we go to Window and then go to Gradient, pop up right here. So compared to the instructions the professor gave us, Illustrator, as you all know, is always updating. They're always making new features and everything, and the grading option is one of them. They've made it amazing, and you can do so much fun stuff with this one. So to switch where the highlight comes and where the shadows come, the core shadow and the reflected light comes from, you go up to Edit Gradient. And it's gonna make your mouse look like a little cross. So wherever you put this cross, it's gonna be where the highlight is gonna be focused. So you can click from over here, and it changes where the highlight comes. So if you click over here, it will create a mistake. Don't click on any like colors. Click outside the box. Click over there. You can see how the highlight kind of changes. So I want, because this is probably the sun, so I kind of want the highlight to come somewhere from around where the sun comes from, so it kind of looks a little more alive and realistic. So I'm going to click up here, which makes our highlight bubble be focused more up there. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with the gradient tool. I'm just going to show you a few tips and tricks. If you hold over a little bubble over here, which will make your mouse make a little hand, you can click and drag these, which will make the highlight much more stronger in color. But if you pull it up, it will make it a little more transparent. As well with the shadow over here, you can pull that one up, which will make the highlight a little bigger and stuff like that. There's a lot to explore with the gradient tool, especially with all these different tools right here. But you can do that by yourself. I'm just going to show you the basic stuff. So whenever you have your little bubble and you think your highlight's looking good, we can leave it like that, and we're going to go back to the instructions. So the bubbles are obviously not fully colored, so we're going to pull down the transparency to 40%. If you directly go over here to opacity and start pulling this one down to 40, it will change whatever circle you placed your mouse on last over here. So we want to make the whole thing transparent, not just the one color blob over here. So I'm going to pull this one up to 100 again. I'm going to go over to my selection tool. We make sure the whole thing is selected so it's not messing around with this little button over here. You can make sure that it's not going to change this singular color gradient bubble by deselecting and then selecting the bubble again. And then we go up to opacity and pull it down to 40. And then there we go. So we want to make a few more of these exactly the same bubbles, and you can do that by holding down Option, which will change your mouse to looking like a black and a white arrow, which means that it's going to duplicate whatever this is. So you just click and hold, and then drag, and then we can drag again. We can make 3 little bubbles. You can make as many bubbles as you want, and I don't want to have them all the same size either. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and make them a little smaller. Click on that one over there, hold down Shift, make it a little smaller, just so we have a few different sizes of the bubbles. And then there we go. There we have our gradient bubbles, and we want to make a little highlighted curve on them so they look a little more realistic as they can in Illustrator. And we're going to go towards that step right now. Lesson is to create the highlights because bubbles are shiny. So we'll need to make a little highlights, and we will do that by creating two shapes, two of the same shapes, but one of them is going to have the opacity of 0, and the bigger one, and then the smaller one is going to have the opacity of 100. So he's been when you're reading this instructions, he drags them out, but we're gonna have them all stacked up because he only does it to show it a little more clearly what we do. But you can just follow what I'm doing right now. So we're gonna first start off by drawing an ellipse and then edit it to a little more highlighted shape. So we're gonna go back to our Illustrator document. We're gonna go over to our ellipse tool right here. We're gonna make sure that the fill is not the same fill as we had before. We used the gradient swatch number 5, but we're gonna use a white gradient. So you can just click on the white gradient, and then we're gonna draw an ellipse, and then we're gonna shape this one to look a little more like a highlight shape. You do that by going to the device selection tool, having this one selected, and then you can just drag these kind of however you want it. I'm just gonna create. Doesn't have to look super pretty, but this is extremely ugly. Okay, you can mess around with this however you want. Maybe I want this one a little bit more up. And there we go. Okay, that's what I'm going to work with. So the next step is to copy this one, the one we just made, and then put the newer one, the newer highlighted shape, which is exactly the same, the one we did, and paste it in the back. So we're going to go back to our Illustrator document, and we're going to click on the selection tool and make sure that this one is selected. And we're going to click Command C, which is copy, and then you go to edit and then paste in back. And with this still selected, we are going to go to Object, Lock, and then Selection. So we go to Object, Lock, Selection. And then we are going to scale the one we have unlocked to a little more to a little smaller shape. So you click on here. So we have two shapes right now on top of each other, and one of them is locked. So we're just going to scale this one down, but keep the same shape. So we click Shift and just scale down to like a little smaller one, maybe like this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I see what I'm doing a little bit better. And we're going to place it on top again. Go back to our instructions. We now have two highlight shapes, a big one with a small one stacked on top. We're going to go to Object and then Unlock All, which will unlock the bigger shape that we have here in the back. Object, Unlock All, and then we are going to, without deselecting, select the opacity of the big highlight shapes. Hit big highlight shape to 0. Big highlighted shape to 0, boom, which is now this one, and then our smaller one has the 100 opacity. And then we are going to select both of them and then create a blend. So we want to make sure we have this one selected right now. We're going to hold down Shift and then click on the small one in the middle. So you can now see that both of them has a green line around it, which means that it's selected. We go to Object, and then we go to Blend, and we go to Make. So this isn't looking really fantastic. So we're going to go to Blend Tools. We're going to go to specific steps. We're going to put in 22. And then make sure we have a preview, and it creates like a little smoother blend between the two shapes. Click OK, and then we're gonna click on the selection tool. We are going to move it to our bigger one to make sure it kind of fits. It's not really the right size as I wanted to, so I'm just gonna resize it. So these are both. This is like a grouped object right now, so you can just hold down Shift and then make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to twist it a little bit. There we go. And this is the final result. So it all depends on what shape you make your first highlight shapes. Mine was kind of a fail, but it still looks pretty decent. And I'm just going to roll with it. So I want to put this highlight on all the other bubbles as well. So I'm going to hold down my Option key. Kidding. I'm just going to copy paste this one. So Command C, and then Command V, and then resize it to fit my little smaller bubbles. You need to resize them, maybe change the angle of them because they are all hitting the sun differently. Copy paste, make sure we have one over here. Gonna switch the angle, size it up a little bit, and then kind of like that. They look much more alive than what we started with. And then this is the end of the assignment. You can make a lot more bubbles if you want to and just play around with different kind of highlights and different kinds of gradients as we used with this whole gradient panel as well. I hope you enjoyed this lesson.